Hockey is Canada's sport, enjoyed by kids and adults across the country, and is often the very fabric that ties a community together. In Swift Current, the sport of hockey dates back to the early 1900s, and the first covered outdoor rink near Elmwood to 1909, which saw the addition of 2 sheets of ice in 1912 for curling. The Swift Current Creek was also an attraction for many residents, offering a venue for the youth to play hockey and others to enjoy a recreational skate through the coming years.
We'd play hockey on the creek quite often, on a cleared area, and I can recall we never went home for a drink of water. We'd go down to the rapids and crawl out on our hands and knees and drink out of the creek water there. And I don't think I'd want to do that now. And another thing, in the evenings, if there wasn't too much snow in the creek, people would come down there on a Saturday or a Friday evening, and the creek would just be, there would be dozens of people out there for a skate. Husbands and wives, guys and their girlfriends and kids out there. And along the creek, especially down toward Elmwood Park, they would have bonfires built right down beside the edge of the creek, and guys would go down there, change their skates, and take their skates and warm them up over the bonfires. And of course, they'd be roasting wieners and marshmallows and stuff like that. Yeah, it was pretty neat to go out there in the moonlight and for a skate and see so many people out there.
And as the creek, backyard rinks and other outdoor locations offered a venue for hockey games and recreational skating. A milestone was achieved in 1921. The Citizens Rink opened in December of that year, where the Legion Hall is located today, which marked the first indoor rink in Swift Current and was a major drawing card for teams and spectators.
Right where the post office is right now was what we called the Kirkley Rink. And it was an open-air rink, of course, and there was all kinds of minor hockey played there. The reason it was called the Kirkley Rink is that right beside there was the Kirkley Garage, which was owned by the Brown family at that particular time. And just 2 blocks over on 2nd Avenue was what was called the Citizens Rink. It was an old-timer, but of course it was closed in, so it was a big highlight for all the kids to play there. I can remember we played every Thursday, and we really look forward to that. So, and that's where the intermediate team played also. And that was a league that was made up primarily of Notre Dame was in there at that particular time. There was teams from Regina and Yorkton and Melville. So it was a great hockey, and we really enjoyed it. And there was a lot of good hockey players back in that particular time.
There was actually a locker room at each end of the rink, but for some reason or another, the one at the south end, away from the lunch counter and the entrance, was very seldom used. At the top end, I guess probably it was a lack of heat as much as anything. There was an old furnace in what we called the dugout, which was the home dressing room. And it was right under the lunch counter in the basement. It had a set of stairs about 2 feet wide that went down in there, and if the fire marshal had seen it now, they'd had an absolute fit. It was really to the depths of depravity, I suppose you could say. A big furnace that hung all over the whole room, and people used to dry their underwear on it and that sort of thing. It was a pretty raunchy place by the time spring came.
The Swift Current Indians brought hockey into the forefront during the 1924-25 season, as they entered the Senior Tri-City League and then reorganized as an intermediate team in 1928. The Indians would win the Southern Intermediate title 11 times from 1928 to 1942, and clinched the provincial title on 5 occasions. Along with the men's hockey in those days was the introduction of a short-lived women's league.
My mother was on the only women's team that we know of in Swift Current in 1924-25. It was called the Swift Current Whites. Now, what the name came from, we're not sure, but the president of the organization was Dr. White, who was a well-known dentist here back in the 40s and 50s.
As the Depression hit the 1930s, local residents faced tough economic times and would save up their money for the 50-cent admission fee to cheer on their favorite teams at the local rink, with local kids holding on to their dreams of making it in the big league.
I can remember years ago, Christmas, what I got for Christmas was a stick and a puck. I didn't get a whole bunch of presents and things like that. I got a stick and a puck, and you got dressed up and you went down to the Kirkley Rink and played all day.
Swift Current teams continued to shine on the ice and bring a sense of pride to the community, with the Swift Current Collegians enjoying a banner year in 1935, capturing the Tip-Top Cup over Shaunavon in the Southwest Saskatchewan Juvenile Championship. The Swift Current Indians also dominated the sport through the 1930s, clinching a series of victories throughout the intermediate division, including a spot in the Allen Cup in the 1931-32 season, where the team fell to the Weyburn Senior Beavers. The Indians went on to clinch the Western Canadian Intermediate Championship for the 1939-40 season. Following a long train trip to the tournament in Vernon, BC, the Swift Current Indians defeated the Luscar Indians of Alberta 5-4 in overtime and 4-3 in regulation time in the second game to win the championship. This would be the last round of competition for the team at this level, as there was no Canadian championship for the intermediate division at that time. The Powell brothers from Port-Reeve were part of that championship team, playing with the Indians for a number of seasons, with Bob Powell set to pursue his NHL dreams. As he was en route to play with the farm team for the Detroit Red Wings, Bob required paperwork to be signed at the local courthouse. The judge of the day convinced him that he should join the military. That was the end of Bob Powell's road to professional hockey. His brother Alan, also a former Swift Current Indian, would serve his country as well. The 1940s was the golden era of hockey, as many young boys aspired to follow their dreams of playing in the NHL and showed off their moves with neighborhood friends.
I know we laced up our moccasins and put Eaton's catalogs on our socks and went up and played street hockey for a long, long time when we were just little tykes.
The team to watch locally were the Swift Current Indians, who made their way to the Western Final each season while developing the skills of a number of local players through the years. This included Jim Back, who stood out on the ice and was approached by scouts of all 6 NHL teams through the 1940s, offers which he declined and chose to stay in Swift Current and continue his job at the research station. Meanwhile, Swift Current Indians goaltender Steve Baczynski was called up by the New York Rangers for a brief stint with the team, playing a mere 9 games as a wartime replacement. Unfortunately, his track record of allowing 55 goals into the net through those 9 games forced the Rangers to send Baczynski home. Baczynski enlisted with the Army, and then after his service, returned to Swift Current and played with the senior Indians team until retiring from organized hockey in 1953. Through the 1940s, the church leagues developed, encouraging more of the youth to become involved in the sport. This was developed through the assistance of such organizations as the Foresters, Oddfellows, Masons, and the Orange Lodge.
They sponsored simply probably by supplying sweaters, and they had no hand in the organization of the hockey there. That was done by people from the city to organize it into teams and players and officials. Yeah, the main rink for the hockey was the Kirkley Rink, and it was quite outdoors. The boards were there, 4 feet high, and they actually had a little building with a pot-bellied stove to change your skates and have a rest, yeah.
The Swift Current Indians continued to be the local team through the 1950s, and crowds would pack the Citizens Rink to watch their favorite players. And to attract more out-of-town fans, the CPR ran a special promotion.
They'd run a train special out to Simi in the afternoon. I can recall working the railroad, we'd take a train with maybe one or two coaches out there, steam engine, and we'd go out there in the afternoon. The train would turn on the Y at Simi and come back in slowly, and people would be standing out there at railway crossings and by their farms and stuff, and they'd come running over to the train and get on the coaches. The train would come into Swift Current and unload about 6:30 in the evening or something like that, just in time for the game with the Indians at Citizens Rink. And people would flock to the rink there, and boy, they'd just stuff that rink with fans and have a great time watching the game. After the game was over, the people all went back down to the station, and the CPR delivered them back out to Simi again.
The strong support of the fans and the caliber of players on the ice spurred the Swift Current Juvenile Indians to a number of championships.
Yeah, in 52, 53, I tried out with the Juvenile Indians. I was still a midget. The year before, they had a great team, the juvenile team, and a lot of guys had either were too old or had moved on to junior hockey. So there was a lot of openings on that 53, 52, 53 team. And a bunch of us made it as midgets. And playoff time came around, and that was the first year that midget hockey was, in Swift Current anyway, that we had a rep team. And so we played on both teams, both the midget team and the juvenile team. So that was the first go around for championship games. We ended up losing the South in the juveniles, and we ended up losing the province in the midgets that year, but we went a long ways. Then the following 2 years we won 53, 54, and 54, 55. We won the juvenile championship. Yeah.
The sport of hockey continued to be a favorite pastime for many through the years, no matter the weather, with fond memories lingering until this day.
Every place I lived, my dad built a rink in the backyard. The boards are only about 6 inches high, so we spent a good deal of our time looking for the puck in the snowbank. And yeah, we didn't play indoors very often. This Citizens Rink was the only indoor rink, and quite frankly, none of us our age ever played much in there. They had several outdoor rinks that were used for the league games for the midget players.
You'd go there early in the morning, you would shovel the snow off the rink, and you'd play all day. It was have frozen feet. There was really no place to really stay warm. There was a little hut in the south end, and with a kind of a coal burning stove in it, and that's where we kind of laced up. And whenever it got so cold that we couldn't stand it anymore, we'd come back into this little hut.
A passion for the sport and a sense of community which would carry through the next 50 years, developing the skills of young players with their eyes on the National Hockey League, and the dream of one day having a local franchise.
We'd clean off an area and we'd play hockey all day. We'd start in the early morning, might go home for lunch, and then in the afternoon we'd be back there playing till it got dark.
Well, my grandfather moved into Swift Current about 1918 or 19. My grandfather was one of the original shareholders in the Citizens Rink.
Played through the church league here, and then I went to university, played for the university team there for a while, and a few years after that. But yeah, I enjoyed a lot of good hockey here.
I played out there until my feet were getting quite cold, and I didn't go in because they started to get warm I ended up in the hospital with serious frozen feet.
Played a little bit of hockey, didn't do a lot. I lived on the south side, quite a ways away from rinks, close to the creek, of course, where there was ice. But in 1948, we moved downtown, 2 blocks away from here, and a block and a half away from a couple of rinks. Spent a lot of time.